The rain pounded against the street as Emily stumbled from the car, her breath ragged, her eyes locking on the figures ahead. Her world collapsed when she saw Daniel's hand wrapped tightly around Sarah's, the betrayal alive in their silence. Emily whispered, "Sarah, not you," but her voice was drowned by the storm. Daniel's gaze shifted away, guilt burning in the shadows, while Sarah's faint smirk cut through Emily like glass. Her heart raced as memories of loyalty and trust shattered in an instant. The pavement gleamed beneath neon lights, a cruel mirror of her broken spirit. The storm outside raged, but the one within her consumed everything. Emily stood frozen, her breath uneven, the rain seeping through her clothes until she felt colder than she ever had before. She wanted to scream, but the sound caught in her throat like shards of glass. Daniel avoided her gaze, his hand still tethered to Sarah's like an anchor of betrayal. Emily's mind raced through memories of nights spent laughing with Sarah, of the trust she had given freely. That trust now lay broken, trampled beneath footsteps she once cherished. She whispered into the night, "Why would you do this to me?" Her voice trembled, lost beneath the storm. The silence that followed was louder than thunder, pressing down until it suffocated her. The storm raged, but inside Emily the storm was worse. She remembered the nights she comforted Sarah, the times she defended Daniel, moments where loyalty felt unshakable. Now those memories mocked her, turning sharp and cruel. Sarah's smirk seared itself into her vision, and Daniel's silence screamed louder than any confession. Emily's knees nearly buckled, and she pressed her palm against the car to hold herself upright. "You both knew," she whispered, voice hollow. "And you chose this." She felt stripped bare, betrayed by the two people she trusted most. The weight of it pressed so heavy she could barely breathe. Sarah leaned into Daniel's arm, her eyes unflinching as if Emily's presence meant nothing at all. The audacity burned into Emily, cutting deeper than the rain. Daniel's lips parted as though to speak, but no words came, only shame disguised in silence. Emily shook her head slowly, her chest rising and falling in sharp bursts of grief and disbelief. "You were supposed to be my best friend," she whispered, each word trembling in the night air. The storm blurred their outlines, yet Emily saw them clearly. The betrayal, the intimacy, the cruelty. It was a moment carved into eternity. Emily's body felt weightless, as though she might collapse right there on the glistening pavement. The betrayal wasn't a wound, it was a tearing apart of her soul. Daniel finally looked at her, but his eyes held no defense, only guilt and silence. Sarah's smirk lingered like a knife twisting deeper. Emily's tears blended with the rain, masking her grief but not her despair. Her voice was barely audible. "I gave you both everything." The words vanished into the storm, but they echoed inside her, a haunting refrain. That night was no accident. It was the end of the bond she thought unbreakable. The storm eventually faded, but Emily's heart carried its weight long after the rain stopped. She sat alone in her quiet bedroom, walls once filled with warmth now echoing emptiness. Her reflection stared back from the mirror, eyes swollen, cheeks pale. She pressed her hand against the glass as though seeking comfort from a stranger. Daniel's laughter, Sarah's smile, they haunted her mind in jagged fragments. Emily whispered, "Who am I without them?" The silence gave no answer. She remembered the life she built with love, trust, and sacrifice, now reduced to ashes. The weight of betrayal pressed down, suffocating every breath. The walls around Emily held photographs of happier times. Smiling faces at birthdays, hands joined at weddings, moments of trust immortalized on paper. Each picture was now a cruel reminder, twisting her heart with every glance. She lingered over one photo of herself and Sarah, their arms wrapped tight, laughter bright. Emily traced the frame with trembling fingers, whispering, "I thought you'd never leave me." Memories of loyalty rushed back, moments where Sarah stood beside her through grief and joy. Yet all of it now felt like lies. The bond had shattered, and the fragments cut her deeper with every breath. Emily sat at the edge of her bed, her hands clasped tight, fighting the tremor in her chest. She remembered every sacrifice she had made, every dream she had set aside for Daniel's comfort and Sarah's happiness. She had poured herself out until nothing remained. Now, in the quiet aftermath, she wondered if anyone had ever seen her for who she truly was. "Was I ever enough?" she asked aloud, her voice breaking. The stillness swallowed her words, leaving her with nothing but the sound of her heartbeat. Her world had crumbled, and she was left standing in the ruins. In the kitchen, Emily stood by the counter, untouched coffee cooling in her hands. The bitter scent filled the air, but she tasted nothing, felt nothing. The weight of betrayal seeped into every corner of her home. She remembered mornings spent laughing with Sarah over breakfast, evenings waiting for Daniel's smile at the door. Every corner now echoed with loss. She whispered, "This house isn't mine anymore." Her body sagged, her spirit frayed, yet a small ember of anger began to stir beneath the grief. It whispered of truth, of questions unanswered, of strength waiting to rise from the ashes. Emily stepped into the living room, where sunlight forced its way through blinds, streaking golden lines across the floor. She stood in the center, arms wrapped tight around herself, trembling. The silence of the room roared in her ears, louder than any storm. Every object carried memory. The couch where she cried with Sarah, the table where Daniel promised forever. Now each memory betrayed her. "Everything was a lie," she whispered, her voice breaking into silence. And though she felt shattered, a quiet strength stirred beneath her pain. Somewhere deep inside, Emily knew this was only the beginning. Emily's hands trembled as she scrolled through Daniel's phone, her stomach twisting with every word she read. Messages filled the screen, sweet nothings that were never meant for her. Her breath hitched as her eyes blurred with tears, yet she forced herself to continue. Plans for secret meetings, promises of a future together, declarations of love she had once believed were hers alone. She whispered, "You lied to me every day," her voice cracking in the silent room. The betrayal carved into her chest, each message another knife. Her world, already fragile, collapsed further under the weight of proof. Her eyes burned as she scrolled through more, the cruel truth unfolding without mercy. Sarah's words leapt from the screen, dripping with intimacy Emily had never known. Each line shattered her, dragging her deeper into despair. The betrayal was no longer an assumption. It was undeniable, written in digital ink. She dropped the phone onto the bed, her hands clutching her hair as if to keep her head from splitting apart. "I gave you my trust," she gasped, her voice breaking into sobs. But trust was gone now, replaced with the bitter taste of humiliation and rage. Emily staggered to the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. The city lights blurred through her tears, each one a reminder of a world still moving as hers collapsed. She thought of Sarah's laughter, Daniel's promises, and how effortlessly they had erased her. Rage simmered beneath her grief, a fire clawing its way to the surface. She whispered, "You both destroyed me," her breath fogging the glass. For a moment, her reflection stared back, hollow and unfamiliar, a stranger shaped by betrayal. She gripped the windowsill, torn between crumbling and rising, between despair and the seeds of defiance. Daniel walked into the room, his face tense, but he offered no words, only silence that screamed guilt. Emily turned toward him, her eyes red but blazing. "How long?" she demanded, voice trembling with fury. He hesitated, lips parting as though the truth was too heavy to carry. His silence was confirmation, sharper than any admission. Emily's chest rose with ragged breaths, her hands clenched at her sides. She had begged for loyalty, given him her soul, and all she received was betrayal. The storm between them was no longer silent. It was a battlefield, raw and merciless. Emily's voice cracked as she shouted, "I gave you everything, and you threw me away like nothing." Daniel flinched but still said nothing, his silence more damning than words. She stepped closer, her tears burning, her anger erupting with every word. "You betrayed me with her, my best friend. Do you even see what you've done?" Her chest heaved, every breath jagged, every word soaked in pain. Daniel's eyes flickered with shame, but he stayed frozen, paralyzed by guilt. Emily's rage and heartbreak collided, a storm breaking free. This was no longer love's ruin. It was war, and she would not surrender. Emily sat in the silence of her living room, her body still trembling from the confrontation. She thought the truth had already gutted her, but the night wasn't finished. Her phone buzzed, the sharp sound cutting through the air like a blade. With shaky hands she answered, and her mother's voice came through, brittle and uncertain. "Emily, there's something I should have told you long ago." Emily froze, her heart pounding. Her mother's tone carried weight, heavy with secrets. "Your father isn't who you think he is." The words sent a chill crawling through Emily's spine. A new betrayal unfolding. Her mother's words cracked like thunder in her ears, shattering what little ground she had left. Betrayal had come from Daniel and Sarah, but now it reached deeper into her blood. Emily whispered, "What are you saying?" Her mother's voice trembled, but the truth spilled. "He wasn't the man who raised you. The truth was hidden to protect you." Emily staggered back, gripping the wall as the room tilted. The betrayal was layered, not one wound but many. Her chest rose with ragged breaths, the lies of her family joining the lies of her love. Everything she knew unraveled. Emily sank to the floor, her back against the wall, the phone trembling in her hand. Her mother's sobs carried through the line, words spilling like broken glass. "I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I thought I was protecting you." Emily pressed her forehead to her knees, her tears soaking into her skin. The betrayal from Sarah and Daniel already gutted her, but this secret cut differently. It wasn't only love that failed her, it was family. She whispered, "You lied to me too." Her voice was raw, the words tearing from a heart already splintered. Her thoughts swirled violently, betrayal upon betrayal, stacking like stones, crushing her chest. Daniel's silence, Sarah's smirk, now her mother's truth, each wound deeper than the last. She raised her head, eyes red, voice shaking. "Everyone I trusted, everyone I loved lied." The phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the floor, the call still alive but meaningless. The world she thought she knew had collapsed. She felt stripped bare, every bond fractured. In that silence, something hardened in her, not just grief but defiance. Pain became fuel, betrayal the spark, and Emily felt a fire rising within. The silence pressed heavy, but Emily no longer felt small within it. Betrayal had gutted her, but the truth revealed something more, strength born from ruin. She wiped her face with the back of her sleeve, her body still trembling, but her spirit shifting. She whispered, "If no one will protect me, I'll protect myself." Her voice cracked but carried weight, her first step toward reclaiming her power. The lies of Daniel, Sarah, and even her family still burned, but the flames no longer only destroyed. They lit something inside her, a resolve that betrayal would not erase her. Emily walked into the cafe where Sarah waited, her heart pounding like war drums. The air was thick, every sound muffled beneath the weight of what was about to unfold. Sarah glanced up, her lips curving into a smile too sharp to be kind. Emily sat opposite her, shoulders tense, hands gripping the table. "You were supposed to be my sister," Emily said, her voice trembling but strong. Sarah tilted her head, her smirk unshaken. The betrayal burned between them, filling the silence. Emily's chest heaved, the moment of truth heavy, raw, and unstoppable. Emily's voice cracked but didn't falter. "You betrayed me in the worst way." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes cold, unrepentant. "Daniel wanted me, Emily. And I wanted him. You were blind to see it." The words landed like daggers, each one deeper than the last. Emily's breath came in sharp bursts, her hands trembling on the table. Rage collided with heartbreak, her soul screaming even as her voice stayed quiet. "I trusted you," she whispered, tears burning but not falling. The air between them was fire and ash, every word a battle, every glance a wound. The door opened, and Daniel stepped inside, his eyes darting between the two women. Tension surged, heavy and unrelenting. Emily's breath hitched as anger boiled, her gaze locking on him. "You let this happen," she spat, her voice rising. Daniel raised his hands weakly, guilt carved across his face. "I didn't mean," he began, but the words died under Emily's glare. Her body shook, not with weakness, but with fire. "You destroyed everything we built," she said, her voice fierce and sharp. The cafe walls closed in, a battlefield with no escape. The three stood locked in silence, the weight of betrayal pressing like thunder in the room. Emily's voice finally cut through, sharp as glass. "You thought you could take everything from me, but you don't know what I'm capable of." Daniel flinched, Sarah smirked, but Emily's words carried steel. Her body trembled, yet power surged through her veins. For the first time she wasn't just broken, she was rising. Her chest heaved, her voice unshaken. The betrayal no longer defined her, it ignited her. Emily turned her back on them, her steps heavy but certain. Her voice carried, steady and raw. "You don't get to break me." The words echoed as she walked out, leaving Daniel and Sarah behind in stunned silence. Her tears still burned, but they no longer drowned her. Every step was a declaration, every breath proof she was still standing. Betrayal had torn her apart, but in that moment, Emily reclaimed her power. The door closed behind her. The cafe swallowed in silence, but her resolve carried her into the storm with unbroken defiance. Emily sat on a park bench as the morning sun broke through gray clouds. Her coat clung to her from the damp night, but her chest rose with calmer breaths. The betrayal still burned, but the sharp edges dulled, leaving quiet ache. She watched strangers walk by, their laughter foreign but grounding. A child's giggle floated through the air, and for a moment, she let herself smile faintly. "Maybe I can still exist outside the pain," she whispered, her voice fragile but steady. Her world wasn't healed, but the silence inside her was no longer suffocating. It was becoming space. Later, Emily stood in her living room, the blinds open, sunlight striping the floor. The same walls that once suffocated her now felt different, lighter. Memories of betrayal lingered in every corner, but she wasn't consumed by them. She traced her hand along the table where Daniel once promised her forever. Her voice cracked, but it carried strength. "You don't own me anymore," she whispered. Her reflection in the window was no longer a stranger, but a survivor. The ache remained, but it was threaded with resilience, the quiet truth that she was still standing. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from her closest cousin, Lily. The words glowed on the screen. "I'm here if you need me." Emily's chest tightened, not from pain, but from relief. For the first time in days, she didn't feel completely alone. She typed back slowly, hands trembling. "I need someone to listen." Her tears spilled, but they were different, less sharp, more freeing. She whispered into the empty room, "Maybe I can still trust someone." It wasn't a cure, but it was a thread, fragile and real, pulling her back toward life. Emily walked into a quiet bookstore, the scent of paper and ink wrapping around her like comfort. She drifted between shelves, her fingertips brushing spines. For once, her thoughts weren't only of betrayal, but of possibility. A stranger passed her in the aisle, offering a kind smile that lingered. She felt the weight in her chest ease slightly. She whispered, "The world is bigger than their lies." The pain remained, but it no longer defined her completely. She was learning to move, to breathe, to exist beyond the shadows Sarah and Daniel left behind. That evening, Emily stood by her window, watching the sunset paint the sky in crimson and gold. Her body still carried the scars of betrayal, but her spirit had shifted. She no longer felt like she was drowning. Instead, she felt the faint spark of strength growing inside her. She whispered, "This isn't the end of me." The words carried into the fading light, not as a plea, but as a promise. The pain was still there, but alongside it, resilience grew. She would rebuild piece by piece, not for them, but for herself. Night fell again, wrapping the city in quiet shadows. Emily sat at her desk, the faint hum of traffic outside blending with the silence in her chest. She reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over a number she once dialed without hesitation. Her hand trembled, her breath unsteady. She wanted to hear a voice she could trust, but trust felt like a memory slipping through her grasp. She whispered, "Please just answer," her voice breaking. The call rang into emptiness, each tone heavier than the last. The silence grew louder, pressing down until it was unbearable. The phone finally clicked, but no voice came, only the hollow echo of unanswered hope. Emily closed her eyes, pressing the phone to her ear as if silence itself could comfort her. Tears rolled down her cheeks, slow and unrelenting. "I just need someone to stay," she whispered, the words swallowed by emptiness. The quiet was cruel, a reminder that betrayal left her not only broken but alone. Her heart ached, but her body stayed upright, refusing to collapse. The silence wasn't a friend, but it was all she had left in that moment. Emily lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling as she set it on the table. The room felt heavier, her breaths uneven, her chest tightening with loneliness. She stared at the empty screen, its glow fading into black. For a long moment she sat motionless, her tears falling silently onto the wood. She whispered, "I've always been alone," the words sharp, bitter, and true. Yet in that confession, a strange clarity emerged. Pain still clung to her, but so did the spark of survival. She was broken, but she was still breathing. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the city lights blinked like distant stars. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, her reflection fractured by the night. "This is my truth now," she whispered, her breath fogging the pain. The betrayal had carved scars, but scars meant survival. Her eyes softened, weary but resolute. The silence no longer felt like defeat. It became a companion, reminding her of strength born from emptiness. She stood taller, her body trembling, but her soul unbroken. The night echoed with quiet, and within it, Emily found the faintest thread of peace. Emily turned from the window, the weight of betrayal still heavy, but no longer crushing. She walked slowly toward her bed, her body carrying exhaustion but also resolve. The night closed in, wrapping her in quiet, and she whispered, "This isn't the end of me." The words lingered like a vow, echoing through the silence. She lay down, eyes open, watching shadows move across the ceiling. The pain would not vanish, but neither would her strength. Betrayal had torn her apart, but it had not destroyed her. And in the stillness of the night, Emily finally began again.